All right, what's happening, everybody? Welcome back to the DFS 5-pack. You got both of us on the screen today, and let's have a little fun. We're just going to kind of run through and just talk about the Thursday night football game because we actually got a really good game.
Yeah, finally a Thursday night. We got a good one. A lot of times it seems to be stinkers. I was telling you before, I made kind of a I made a draft betting video. Like, it's not out to the public. I made it for someone specific. And so I was really diving into this game, and a lot to like about both these teams right now. What I was saying, and I know before the show you were talking about how good the Chiefs D is. You asked me who I liked in this game. The reason I don't have so much confidence in the Chargers is because I was on the Chargers a couple weeks ago against the Bengals. I liked them a lot. And they won that game, but they were up 24-0 in that game, collapsed. In the second half, the Cincinnati was definitely the better team. It took a fumble 6 for them to win that game. And since then, I know they rolled the Giants last week. I just trust the Chiefs more than the Chargers. But I think this game should be a really good game. Go ahead.
I absolutely anticipate this game being really, really close. Should be. And we kind of talked about that beforehand. Nothing's guaranteed in the NFL these days, but this has every makings of a really, really good football game.
You struggle to see either of these teams get rolled, especially Kansas City. They just hardly ever get, rolled like that. The Chargers also, like, their offense is good enough where even if their defense gives up points, they can score. So I'm with you. Like, this game should not be a blowout.
Who's coming out of the AFC this year?
I think, gotta say Kansas City right now. I'm still just not completely buying what New England's selling. Not that they're not good, but I'm just not taking a rookie quarterback. I think they lose actually this week and next week to Buffalo. So my money's on Kansas City. The AFC North looks very average right now. None of those teams look like they can really make a run. Tennessee's interesting. Like, if Derrick Henry, if and when he comes back and he's healthy. But if you're asking me today, it's Kansas City.
Yeah, I think if I had to place a bet, I'd agree with you on Kansas City. I'm intrigued by New England. Rookie quarterback, right? Intrigued on that. But part of it is because the AFC is just not that good.
No, it's not. I'm also like, as far as, kind of to that point, Buffalo, I don't think they're done at all. But they got a real easy schedule. If they beat New England next week, like they already showed, the NFL changes week to week, but they went into Kansas City and gave Kansas City like their worst beatdown in years, it seems. So they're still on my list too.
Yep. So it should be interesting. NFC, I like where my Packers are sitting.
Sure.
But until I see Tom Brady not get every ball bounce his way, like it has for his entire career, like I'm just going to assume it's Tampa.
Yeah, it seems like the NFC has 3, maybe 4 real teams in Tampa, Green Bay, and then I still think the Rams are in that tier. And it's hard to say Arizona's not in that tier. Those 4 teams look like the top 4 teams in the league besides Kansas City.
No arguments here. All right, guys. So we'll start talking about the DFS game we'll start talking about the football game tonight, but from a DFS perspective. So I'll ask you this question. Looks like the guys getting the most to love at the captain position are Mahomes and Justin Herbert. Am I crazy to think like you just use Justin Herbert?
No, I don't think you're crazy there at all. Both of them are elite. You save a decent amount of money putting Herbert in there just because, the captain price tags. These teams have played in primetime before, so like just bringing this slate up, brings back memories. The problem when these two teams play is they're so star heavy. Like, everyone on these two teams are the studs, and you just can't roster them all. That's just what it is. Even if you wanted to and you could afford it, like there's more than 6 guys, but there aren't like 15 guys you want to roster. It's a tricky one.
So since week 6 against Washington, Patrick Mahomes has one really good game against Las Vegas, one pretty good game last week against Las Vegas. And if he had to throw it all in the second half, it would have been a lot better. But, he has been throwing up duds, like left and right. I didn't think we would really ever see this. It's difficult for me to think like he is a captain priority. I could actually make a case to not use him tonight.
I could make that case too. I think for me, the stronger case would be to potentially not use either quarterback in the captain, just for salary cap reasons alone.
I do think so the Chargers can be had via the run.
Sure.
And I think if you want to get out there and if you're playing from a GPP perspective and you're trying to be a little bit different, I don't think Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the captain position is the craziest thing in the world.
No, and he's like literally the cheapest guy you want to roster, of the good guys.
I agree. So I know you're like as big of a Kelsey fan as there is out there. Like what's up with him?
He's got one end zone target this year.
This guy he started off the year looking like Travis Kelce since week 4. I mean, by his standards, has one decent game.
Not even like an amazing game.
No, not at all. So
he hasn't scored in 4 straight games. Like, I still love Kelce, and maybe this is just like a blip on the radar, but maybe he's getting a little bit older.
Maybe the whole Chiefs offense seems a little off.
Right. Yeah, agreed.
Tyree Kale again, and like last week they were so good that all the stats suck because they didn't have to do anything in the second half. If you could only roster Tyree Kale or Patrick Mahomes, who would you go with?
Man, that's a good one. I'd usually always say Mahomes, but upside alone, I think I might say Hill here. It's really close, though.
And, you kind of talked about this early on. The cheap options on this slate are awful. So you really have to prioritize your top guys.
Yes.
So all the studs, and when I'm going to say studs, I'm going to talk Kelce on up. I don't really think I'm looking to play Mike Williams. I don't think he's obviously a bad play if you're trying to be a little different from the GPP perspective.
I view him like I do Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's in play. I just don't view him on the stud tier like the other guys.
Yeah, and I'd rather play Edwards-Helaire over Mike Williams. That's not even a question for me.
I get it.
So
not looking at either of them too hard.
Okay. Of all the guys from Kelce on up, do you have a priority list?
It's hard because I'm not sure like what Eckler's exact status
Eckler is supposed to play.
But is he going to be like a full go?
I mean, that makes a real question, right? So we can only watch as the day progresses to see if we get any news on that. And the odds-on favorite, I don't think we get any real news.
No. The other part that's hard about it is not only are these the guys I want to roster, I don't really have that much of a difference between any of them.
Nope, I'm with you on that one. Like, this is one where, for me, like, I expect a really good football game.
Same.
I probably don't play this showdown too aggressively, and I just watch this game and just enjoy being a fan for the night.
Yeah, like you asked me that question and no rhyme or reason. My gut says Eckler. I also think he'll probably be lower owned than some of the other guys. And for me, it does seem like their offense goes through Eckler. Like they got a lot of good offensive players, but I don't think it's crazy to say he's their best.
So I think for sure I'm going to roster Herbert and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Those are 2 guys I know will make my roster. And then after that,
it's the price thing.
The Chargers aren't very good against the run. And I've liked what I've seen from Edwards-Helaire over the last couple of weeks. Not love. I don't think he's a great running back or anything like that, but I like the way that they're using him. And I expect 15 to 20 touches from here tonight. And the Chargers are not a good run-stopping team. So I think you'll have a solid night. And, yeah, a lot of it is because of the price.
My biggest not even worry, my biggest hesitation, and the price is great, is Darrell Williams. And, I know the game got out of hand, but Gore, they don't hesitate to use other guys in that backfield. So I think he's a fine look, but I'm thinking he's like a bell cow.
So let's actually talk about that for a second in the Gore Williams thing. So I think for anybody who is game log watching, you're going to see that Darrell Williams only had 2 carries last week and Gore had 9. That seemed to be a direct correlation to how big of a blowout it was. So if you expect, like, Gore is still every possibility for being like a 0-touch guy today. So I wouldn't be like locking him in, guys, just because he had a really nice second half the other day. He broke a long run. Outside of that, he wasn't overly effective or anything like that. That was a blowout of epic proportions.
I guess I completely agree with you. My point is that, like, I'm not using Gore here, but maybe Gore earned 4 carries tonight. That's a couple less from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And they're also not afraid to give Darrell Williams touches. Not like a ton of touches, but go ahead.
I was just saying that's like where maybe like if you don't like Edwards-Helaire, playing Williams could be an interesting play because he's actually cheap.
I do like Edwards-Helaire. I just don't think he's a lock. But to that point, I don't think anyone's a lock on this slate because all of them guys are so close.
Okay, so I'll phrase this the way that I'm sure you'll probably relate to a little bit more. Edwards-Helaire is close to a lock for me on this slate. If this was a game on the main slate, I wouldn't be like, oh, he's a must-play.
Okay, yeah, for sure. I like him a little bit less than you. Like on a main slate, I'm not sure I would play him, but I'm not going to say he's a bad play at all. So that makes a lot of sense.
All right, so Josh Gordon's out tonight. Not that that's like a big contributing factor, right? Like the guy had, 4 catches. He had a couple targets last week, caught a touchdown and everything like that. It is creating a spot, though, where Byron Pringle seems to be a little more highly likely to be utilized and also going to be relatively popular tonight because of his price tag. Like everybody watching this video, playing this slate tonight, we're all in the same boat. The cheap options are awful.
No, this is one where, like, I feel like if you're a mass multi-enter, you have an advantage tonight because you can just take shots on all the cheap guys.
For sure. And
because if you're building one lineup, like if we're building one lineup, there's not going to be many guys down there that we're like comfortable locking in. Like one is fine because you can take the 0 or whatever. But if you're playing a lot of lineups, you just got to mix and match all these guys.
And then the only thing that can really, really change that is if Austin Eckler goes from likely to play to not playing. And then all of a sudden you got 2 Chargers running backs that you can take a look at, and Kelly at 800 and Jackson at 2,000. There is also, like, I don't know, the Chargers have done this occasionally. Like out of nowhere, Justin Jackson could be inactive tonight and Kelly's the backup. That's not a likely scenario, but we've seen him play around with that a little bit this year. I think Justin Jackson is a play. Same. Especially knowing that Eckler probably, we know he's not 100%.
He's definitely a play for me, even with Eckler playing, which is what you're presuming and saying that. And just for no other reason, the value sucks. He got a couple carries when Eckler was in last game. I told you I watched a lot of that Chargers-Bengals game a couple weeks ago. He was in early on that game too. Like, and they've even made a point, broadcasters, I've heard this mentioned a couple of times. The Chargers would love for one of these other guys to like take over that second running back role. They just haven't done it. Like Eckler's so much better than them that it's hard for the Chargers to take Eckler off the field.
Yeah, and Justin Jackson, it's the best version of a compliment I can give him. He's not god-awful, I guess.
No, he's not good, but he's not god-awful. Like, he's competent. I mean, he reminds me of a ton of the other, like, backup running backs that, if they fill in, can be decent.
Yep, I always think of former Packer Jamal Williams as the perfect example of a backup running back he's fine. You watch him some weeks, you're like, oh, this guy's pretty good. And then you watch him some other times, you're like, he doesn't really do much to move the needle. To me, like that is the perfect example of a backup running back, and he's probably a little bit better than Justin Jackson, though.
Yes, he is probably a little bit better, but I get your point. And that just speaks to Eckler is freaking good. Like, I'm not even talking about his fantasy numbers. Did you watch the Monday Night Football game, Cardinals and Rams?
About half of it. James
Conner was amazing, catching the ball out of the backfield the whole game. He's done that all year. That's what Eckler does every game. Conner looked like Eckler, which is pretty crazy. I never thought I'd say that. But the point is that Eckler does that every game.
And that's the thing about some of those mediocre running backs is there's a lot of other games where I know you've even commented that Conner looks like not even a guy, like a below average running back. And then out of nowhere, he has a really good game. Like, never mind, this guy is good. The eye test.
He's really impressed me this year, I will say. Like, even, because this whole year I'm thinking back on prior games where, Conner never really was that good in Pittsburgh. He was fine, rushing, getting into the end zone, but was never a great third down back catching the ball. So that bias has been with me all year. He's been having a monster year. He's one of the best backs in the NFL. I don't want to say like I was wrong on him because I feel like everyone was wrong on him. But you're right. The eye test can definitely go up and down.
Yeah, and I mean, part of that could just be like a flow thing. Some of these running backs don't all get almost nobody gets Derrick Henry type of carries. But like even like my boy A.J. Dillon, who I'm a huge fan of, like when some of those games where he only gets 4 or 5 carries, like you don't see anything that wows you. And then the very next game, he might get 10, and there'll be just a couple of wow plays. You're like, well, this guy is,
I love that point because earlier in the year, as Connor's been scoring touchdowns all year, so that's really boosted his numbers and fantasy relevance. But for the first 6-8 weeks when Chase Edmonds was in also, Edmonds was averaging far more yards per carry than Connor. Basically the same amount of carries, a little bit less for Edmonds. Since Edmonds has been out and Connor's been the guy, he has been amazing. Like, not even just numbers wise, eye test wise, catching the ball out of the backfield. I do think a lot of that is because he knows he's the guy.
Another part of it too, from a yards per carry perspective, if you're only getting 12 touches per game and 4 of them are goal line or 3rd-and-1 carries, it's, that's all that you're going for. Having played running back in high school, when they say get a yard, all you're worried about is getting a yard. Now, if the hole opens up, you hit it, but your job is to get the first down, not to try to take it to the house.
For sure. No doubt about it, because the last thing you want to happen is to not get that yard.
Yeah, amen to that one. All right, guys, so let's get back to the actual DFS slate on hand. So I do think that if you're playing in a cash game tonight, that Pringle is the cheap guy that you're probably going to want. Early in the day, it looks like he's getting the highest, percentage of ownership. And then after that, you can always take a chance on these Chargers wide receivers.
I was impressed with Palmer last week. And, obviously Keenan Allen's back, but Herbert liked him. And, like I said with Gore, maybe Palmer earned a little bit in that game.
Okay. And then Jackson, as we just kind of mentioned. And then as far as like real cheap guys, they just really don't exist, unless Eckler's out all of a sudden.
Yeah, they just don't exist. I mean, these guys just don't hardly play.
All right. So for me, gun to head, Herbert is my captain. I'm going to play Edwards-Helaire. I'm more of a cash game guy, specifically when it comes to the showdown. So I'll probably get Pringle in there. And that leaves me right here with 8,006 per offensive guy. Like, what can I do with this? I got 24-2. Now, we could go with like a Mahomes, Keenan Allen. What does that leave us? 2,800? Well, that's probably where like you would play like a Jackson, right?
Palmer or Jackson.
Yep. And also, I just want to bring up Demarcus Robinson. I do think Pringle is going to be substantially higher owned. I don't think his path to success is that much higher, though. So, like, you know how it is with the Chiefs, right? Like, even though they haven't been big plays, all over the place like the last couple of seasons, like 140-yard touchdown to Robinson is not a crazy play in the slightest. And that would outscore Pringle at probably, a 3-1, 4-1, 5-1 discrepancy.
I don't know what the ownership discrepancy will be, but I completely agree with you. If you ask me to place a wager on who's going to be better, Pringle or Demarcus Robinson, I'm going to say Pringle. Yeah. But it's not with like the utmost confidence. So then you tell me that one of them is going to be 3 times higher owned than the other. Give me the other.
Right. Now, if you went like with a Hill and Allen, would that get you anything better? Or get you Darrell Williams, which I think better. In your mind. Probably. Yeah. Probably.
Especially if you're captaining Herbert, you think the Chargers are going to score, the Chiefs are throwing a little bit, and I have no issue playing both Chiefs running backs.
Right. Although if I'm playing in the GPP, and I'm playing Williams, I probably am choosing him over Edwards-Helaire. And I'm hoping that at some point, like he's in when he gets a goal line carry because Edwards-Helaire is resting or just not in the game.
I agree with you, but I'll flip that on its head and say, like, while that is probably more optimal, in these showdown slates are so crazy, most people won't want to roster Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Darrell Williams together. So just because it's a 1-game sample, they could both get there.
And then the other, just to kind of reiterate what we're saying, if you're believing in that, tell yourself a story on how the game works.
Exactly.
I mean,
Go ahead.
We talk about that all the time in the showdowns, specifically. Like, tell yourself a story. I'm not saying your story is right. We all get our stories wrong all the time, but you got to have if you're stacking Herbert, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams, you probably think the Chargers have to throw a lot. So maybe that's where you feel like both running backs are more viable.
Right, exactly. Or whatever your story is, just tell it, and that's how it's got to play out. I will say, to the Chiefs' point, and you mentioned it with last game, like their defense has been so good, they've not had to play like high-powered offense the past few games.
Well, they haven't had to. Their offense also hasn't played very well.
No, it hasn't.
What about the Chiefs' defense?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I think they're definitely in play here. Because everyone's in play on showdown slates. I think that they're playing really well right now. I was going to ask you about them. That's, the point for using them.
17 points or less in 7 of 8 games is just damn impressive.
Very, very impressive.
And I know it hasn't been the hardest kind of setup of games. You got Washington. Obviously, they got rolled by Tennessee on that bad week. The Giants aren't very good. You got the Packers with Jordan Love, a Vegas team that's floundering, a Denver team that's not very good, at least offensively. And then Dallas, it was a nice game by them right there. So it hasn't been the hardest competition. This is probably the hardest test they've had over this time period.
The Dallas game was impressive.
Yep. All that being said, they are playing well. So it's not just a victim of circumstance. You can't play this many NFL games. I don't care who you're playing.
Right.
And allow stuff like this. 3 straight weeks of not giving up double-digit points. I don't care if you're playing the Jaguars, Texans, Lions. That's impressive.
100% agreed.
So I do think that the Chiefs' defense is in play, and it's probably under-owned tonight because I think it's a struggle for us who have been watching this Chiefs team for years now, right? Even though we know the defense has outplayed the offense this year, I still fear the offense more than the defense.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I also think they'll probably be lower owned.
So I do think from a GPP perspective, I don't know, what do you think? Maybe 15, 20%?
They're coming in at 15%. So right there.
Yeah, okay. That's something to think about. I think if it's me and I'm making a cash lineup like right now, I think it's Herbert. For me, Edwards-Helaire.
I was just going to say, like, to your point about, the defense in this game, I think everyone looks at this game like two high-powered offenses. You got Mahomes. Obviously, the Chargers have been very good. This game was like 20-14 earlier this year with the Chargers winning in Kansas City. Now they play again, divisional battle. I'm not going to be shocked if this game is pretty low scoring.
No, not at all. Thursday night game, motivated teams. They got a really good
Dude, very motivated teams. This game is massive because San Diego's 9-4, or Kansas City's 9-4. The Chargers are 8-5. Casey's got a 1-game lead, but if the Chargers win, they'll overtake them because they'll have beaten them twice.
Yeah, it's nice that it's like we get this game on a Thursday night where it's the only one you have to watch.
Exactly, because a lot of times we get those stinkers. So this one's like one of the best games of the week.
Right? I don't know if you guys know this, but the Jaguars have played the Texans every other Thursday night game this year.
Yeah, seriously.
So what this is telling me, though, I haven't really even considered Travis Kelce, which could be a mistake. But I'm wondering if other people are going to think about it, or the fact that he's cheaper than these other guys by $1,500 and whatever it might be, has him maybe higher owned. That's an interesting one for me.
I think that he's going to be high owned.
Okay. Just because of the price difference?
Price difference, name recognition, all that. He's not going to be like the chalkiest player on the slate. That'll be the quarterbacks, but I think he comes in like right with Keenan Allen, Eckler, and Kelce, I think will be similarly owned.
Like looking at putting him in this lineup, it doesn't do anything for me because what does it get me? Like Jared Cook? I think Jared Cook's overpriced.
Right, for sure.
Hardman has been a non-factor recently. I like Guyton, but he's too expensive at $5K as well. Yeah, he had a big game last week, long touchdown and everything like that. So it doesn't really upgrade you that much.
No, it's whether maybe you'd go from Edwards-Helaire to Kelce, which it looks like the field is choosing.
So I don't know. I don't really have much else to throw in. I think for me, Herbert's my most likely captain. I'm taking Kelce out of here and going with like a Mahomes. And even though Mahomes hasn't been great, you definitely know he can be.
Yeah, or Tyree Kale like you had earlier.
Yeah, for sure. So that's it, guys.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And always love getting on here with you.
It was nice to talk to you.